So the Battlefield 6 open beta ended last weekend, and I thought I just wanted to sit down and give it a little bit of a mini review and sort of overall first impressions of what this game is and could potentially be when it launches in October in, God, close to probably 6 weeks now. But hands down, I gotta say, I think that was the most fun I've had in a multiplayer game in God knows how long, probably like 5 years, right? To be completely honest, I think Fortnite was probably the last one that was like an early Fortnite, like 2018, 2019, that I had a lot of fun. If this beta, I think, is representative of what the final game is actually going to be like, I think we're going to be in for a real good time, a real fun time, because it was just amazing. And I'm going to say I was really impressed with the first weekend. Like, the game ran like butter. And I know that obviously it's a vertical slice, so it's not representative of the entire game and what the entire game will be like when it launches. That could be a very different story, and the game could launch like total crap when it comes out in October. But I think, having said that, in all the Battlefield betas that I've played previously, they've all been pretty good. And I think they've all been pretty representative of what the game will be like when it comes out. Actually, sorry, no, I think that is true. They've all been representative of what the game is like when it comes out, because I remember the Battlefield 2042 beta when that came out, and that was horrendous. And then when the game launched, it was horrendous. It was a little bit better, but it was still horrendous. So I think this game, when it launches, is going to be really good, really well done. However, we won't know until the game comes out, so hence the whole, no pre-orders thing. But the game itself, I mean, how does it play? How does it feel? It plays amazing. I think this game is a real proper evolution of what Battlefield 4 was and Battlefield 3 was. I think it was the next sort of logical step that they needed to take to keep the series relevant, because as good as Battlefield 1 was, and I'm sure Battlefield 5 got really good towards the end of its life cycle, and allegedly 2042 did as well towards the end, those games weren't Battlefield games to me. And I know that Battlefield started off, in World War II, and Battlefield 5 was kind of representative of that. But to me, Battlefield has never been anything other than modern warfare. And I think Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 were the absolute pinnacle, or the absolute peak of this franchise. Obviously, you had Bad Company 2 and Bad Company before it, and Battlefield 2 for that matter, but I think this game really peaked. This series really peaked with Battlefield 4. And I don't think the series has ever quite reached that level of sort of excitement and amazingness since those games. So, at least for me, I mean, we're talking Battlefield 4 launched, October 2023? 12 years ago when that came out, and obviously over the course of the year after it launched, but really 2014 was sort of, at least for me, the last time I actually properly played a Battlefield game, and a good one at that. And I know that people glaze Battlefield 1 and say that it was amazing, but I still remember the day that that trailer launched, and half of the Battlefield fan base was born when that game came out, and I think now another half has been created with this game. But you know what, admittedly, I think this game deserves it. But overall, look, running around, killing people, shooting people, the movement feels really good. I think it feels great. It just feels right. Like Call of Duty, I really struggled with. It feels amazing. They've done a great job with COD, but it feels too fast and too aggressive and too slippery, and some people are just so crazy with how they can move in that game. Like, it's too fast, and I love with this game how slow it is, right? It feels a little bit more methodical, and I like, you can slide in it, you can dive, you can actually like crouch run as well, which is pretty cool. And there's none of that tactical sprinting where you lift your gun up in the air and run like a madman. I like that they got rid of that. That was really good. I'm glad that they got rid of that, because I think that got me killed so many times in 2042, ironically. So, but yeah, the overall movement, it feels good. It doesn't feel too slippery. It's just perfect. You have weight. It feels heavy to run around. They've done a great job with the overall movement. Everything feels right. You can jump off high area and then sort of land into a roll, and that's pretty cool. And even, I know everyone's touched on it, but the whole dragging mechanic as well, that's fantastic. I think they took that out of BattleBit Remastered, and I think that did a good job of really making it feel a bit more in depth. Even though I feel that it was great, I think everyone the first weekend was doing it, and then I noticed the second weekend no one was, let alone reviving, as a support class, right? People would play support and just run straight past you and not even revive you with the defibs. So I think it's a cool feature in practice. It's just a shame that no one really used it or tried it out beyond the first weekend. So, but cool nonetheless that it's there. And weapons wise, look, I gotta say the weapons all feel great. I know people were sort of whinging about the shotgun and thinking that the shotgun was sort of overpowered, and it is, but it isn't. You know, you can't snipe people on it if you're on a bigger map, beyond it being really close quarters where it excels at, because that's what it is, it's a shotgun. But it's perfectly fine. I mean, I got killed by it plenty of times, but it felt fine, it felt fair, you know, it is what it is. And I kind of don't mind, because I've gone on a streak with the shotgun a few times, everyone has, and it feels great. And then, you know, sometimes you don't. But overall, look, I think all the guns feel great. The only thing that I don't really like was the ARs. They felt so inconsistent with close range. I would just much prefer an SMG, because an SMG was just far more accurate, shot much faster, and dealt way more damage. And then even like, you know, short to medium distances, right? We think at a medium distance an AR is perfect, but I could get away with using an SMG at medium distance or a LMG at medium distance, right? You know, that short to medium distance SMGs were perfect. They shot really, really quickly, really, really efficiently, and I could get kills at medium range with an SMG. And then at that medium to long range, I could just use an LMG and kill people at long range anyway with the LMG. Obviously not like super long range, because that's just, you need a sniper for that. But yeah, I just feel the ARs kind of got, you know, they kind of missed out. Like, they don't really do what they're supposed to do, because the other classes do really, really well. And they had too much recoil as well. I feel like the LMGs had very little recoil, the SMGs had very little recoil, but the ARs did. So maybe that's something that they'll change, and you know, maybe I'll be bashing the LMGs when the game comes out. But overall, gunplay felt great. It, you know, was really, really fun. It felt satisfying to get kills, and no complaints. I'm happy with it. Now the maps. So obviously, I think as you probably saw, a lot of people were whinging there weren't really any big sort of large open conquest maps. I mean, we had, I think it was Liberation Peak, which I gotta say, that map, I think it's a conquest map I didn't really like. It felt too narrow, and I think what ended up happening is that everyone kind of got just caught at the middle with each other and didn't really push past, you know, that middle section, which really sucked. You know, you kind of think as a conquest map that you kind of have different pockets of people battling around. You know, I think of one of the Battlefield 4 maps with the tanks. I think it was Golmud Railway, or whatever the railway map was. There were multiple sort of areas, or, you know, miniature city bits that everyone was fighting in, and same with Siege of Shanghai and all of this. Liberation Peak just didn't have that. Everyone was just sort of fighting in the middle, and that was it. I didn't really like that map as a conquest map. It didn't play very well. The only game modes I got to admit I did have fun with it on was Rush and Breakthrough. I think that map plays really well as a rush map, as a breakthrough map, because you're forced to go to a particular point and break through, or, you know, destroy the MCOM sites in Rush. But that being said, I noticed on Breakthrough, the amount of games I played where you got caught at A and the defense team just bunkered down, and just, you know, you could not break through to A. If you were with a crap team, you couldn't break through no matter what you did. So I think that map needs some sort of fixing with that one A site, because it is such a choke point, and then if you can't get through it, you just lose the game at the first point, which really sucks. So I don't know, that map, at least for me, is not a fan favorite. I will put that right down the bottom as a map. It's not fun, it's just crap, to be honest. Well, it wasn't a fan. That being said though, I gotta say the other two maps, Siege of Cairo and Iberian Offensive, I gotta say they were fun. Now, caveat to that, Siege of Cairo was awesome. I love that map, and I think that is a perfect sort of balance of infantry and kind of smaller vehicles. Like, I know that tanks aren't small vehicles, but it had less vehicles, right? And I think they kind of only maxed it out to about 4 vehicles on the map, which is fine. It's a good balance, but it's a great infantry map. It's a great vehicle map for the limited amount of vehicles that they had. And when I say limited, I mean, you know, obviously it didn't have planes and tanks, which is fine. It's a medium-sized map, but I love it. Siege of Cairo, awesome. I think really well-designed map. You know, on Conquest, absolute blast to play. You know, and even that little glitch that happened, you know, towards the end where you could sort of get onto the roofs, that was a pretty cool sort of, you know, bug. And I hope that they keep that in, because that's a cool little thing to be able to do, at least in Conquest. Probably the other modes like Rush and Breakthrough, they probably need to patch it so you can't get up there, because the amount of times that I died in that game mode to people just camping on the roof, which sucked. But overall though, I really like Siege of Cairo, and I think for me that was the real standout map. It played fantastic on Conquest and Breakthrough and Rush and Domination, and really fun map, and probably the highlight of the beta for me. So Iberian Offensive though, nice map, but I just feel like is a crapper version of what Siege of Cairo is. Again, fun infantry map, but it was just Siege of Cairo, but like worse. So I don't know how to feel about that map. Like nothing really negative to say about it, just that it was Siege of Cairo, but a little bit crapper. But still played well as an infantry map, and with the vehicles and all the game modes were really fun on it. So that'll be an interesting one to see if it sort of lasts, or whether Siege of Cairo will become the preferred one of the two. Now, while we're talking about vehicles, I just reminded myself there, I actually got to say the tanks are crap. I mean, they're good, but they're crap. I think they've got too little health for what they are, and they are very slow and very like hard to hit things. And I know that they're tanks and they're supposed to be used against other tanks, but they're not tanky. They die in like 4 shots. Whereas I got to say the other one, the LDV or the LAT or the LAV, the LAV, I'll just call it a LAV or a LAT. That vehicle I loved, right? That was really maneuverable. You got way more shots. Maybe it's because these were infantry maps, and that's probably what the issue was for me, was that the LAVs or the LATs worked really well in infantry maps against the infantry, and that's I think why I loved that vehicle far more, and went on to get so many more kills with it, because it just worked really well in those maps. Whereas the tanks were crap, and I think that is something that they do need to do, is they need to keep the LAV at the current level of health that it's got, but then make the tank stronger, because the tanks, you would just, you'd get stuck and then you just get blown up straight away. So they need to make it a bit more tankier, and be able to tank some more shots, because, and this is the thing I noticed particularly in maps like Liberation Peak on Breakthrough, when you're trying to push through, you need that tank to be able to push through and get into A site. But then the problem is that everyone just goes engineer or recon and just blow it up and then it's done, so that's probably my only piece of feedback with the tank, is it needs to be made a bit more tanky, a bit stronger would be perfect. Now the helicopters and the planes, I'm so torn over, because I don't know if it's maybe just me being a noob with them, but they were horrible to control. And I actually had this issue back in Battlefield 3 as well, where I really struggled to fly them. But then for whatever bizarre reason, the flight controls that they got in Battlefield 4 were like perfect. Like I remember playing Battlefield 3 right towards the end and trying to fly the helicopters and the planes and really struggling. But then Battlefield 4 launched and I jumped into Battlefield 4 and flew the planes and helicopters really easily, and actually really well. Like I was an absolute beast in the little birds and the attack helicopters in Battlefield 4. So I don't know what they've done, what they've messed up, and I just wish that they went back to the controls and how the helicopters and planes felt in Battlefield 4. And even the planes, I didn't really fly the planes much, but I think I did pretty well in them regardless for how little I played. So that's the other piece of feedback with the vehicles. I wish they went back to the controls for Battlefield 4 and how they felt in BF4, because that was just perfect for how they felt. Now the other thing that I just want to touch on as well, and just again sort of give my feedback on, is just how the game looks, or more so how the UI looks. I noticed that when you get kills, I feel like it's very dark, with where the kill counter is and how it looks, and I just wish that it was a little bit brighter. And I say that because you look at Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3. Battlefield 3, I remember it was blue and you could see it and it looked good. It felt satisfying for that to pop up and for you to get kills. And I think Battlefield 4 was orange, but I could be wrong, but it was bright. And it's the only thing that I wish they went back to, is they just made that a little bit brighter, or gave me the option to, because the current way that it looks is a little too dark and I feel like I can't see, and it's not satisfying to see it pop up. And the whole maps as well, if you go back and look at Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, particularly Battlefield 4, all the A sites and A, B, C, D are all orange, and the map overlay looks good and bright and you can see everything. And I just wish that they would fix that, because it's little things like that I think make the game just better, and I wish that they kind of could fix, and they still very much can fix it. So I would love for them to do that. Oh, and as well, it reminds me, as well as the level up screen as well, the whole level up things that pop up, like the sound is perfect. I love that it's the Battlefield theme song, but the logos as well, just a little bit too dark and brown, but that might just be the lower ranks, and maybe the higher ranks will look better. But I don't know, just noticed that, and that was a little thing that I had a little bit of a whinge about. The other thing that I wanted to touch on very quickly, that I initially was a little bit upset about, but then have sort of changed my tone about, and that was the whole open weapons playlist. Basically what that was that in previous Battlefields, and this is for people that don't know, feel free to skip skip ahead if you already know. In previous Battlefields, if you played support, you could only use LMGs and maybe like some other, like the DMRs and the carbines, but it was predominantly LMGs. You couldn't use SMGs, or you couldn't use a sniper, or you couldn't use an AR. And same goes if you were a recon, you couldn't use LMG. And I think I was very much a bit of a purist with that. I was very much, they shouldn't change that and they should keep it, how it was. And thinking about it, I kind of think that they should do it. Like, you're sitting there thinking about it, but then playing the game was a completely different story. And I actually really, really enjoyed it. I loved being able to be a support person and run around and, revive people, but be able to use an SMG, particularly on some of the maps like, and I totally just reminded me, I totally forgot to talk about the Empire State map. But on that map, that was very close quarters, and I liked being able to run around as support in whatever game mode and use an SMG, but still be able to revive people. And I say that because the SMG on that map played a lot better. Whereas I couldn't imagine it would be miserable running around as a support with an LMG on that map. And I really like that. I really like it. Just opens the game up a little bit more. It makes it a little bit more fluid. I'm not entirely against it, and to be honest, I didn't even bother to touch the closed weapons playlist, which is a shame. I should have given it a go, but I didn't. But yeah, the game, to me at least, it felt fine, and I think people sort of stick to what the guns are anyway. Like, I noticed plenty of people playing Assault and they kept with the machine guns, and I noticed plenty of recons playing as recon with a sniper. The only thing that just reminded me with that I strongly disagree with is them changing the little spawn beacon from the recon class to the assault class. I can understand the logic behind it, of them going, well, we want the assault class to be able to get around and place beacons and all that, but I feel like the whole point of the recon class was to kind of do that anyway. And I kind of go, I don't know, it's going to be a bit of a hassle to, you be a recon, you run up the mountain, and then you get sniped, and then you got to do it again. But then maybe that'll combat it, because at least on Liberation Peak, the amount of snipers on that map, so maybe that will decrease that if they switch it to Assault. We'll see how it goes. And I did notice, strangely, with the second open weekend for the beta, the game was a little bit more graphically glitchy. I noticed a few more graphical glitches sort of here and there, so I don't know what happened there, but I hope that it doesn't carry over to the full game. But overall, I gotta say, the game was a blast. So I think it is in a far better state than what the Battlefield 2042 beta was. I think that they've learned from their mistakes and hopefully fixed it. So I hope that when this game launches, it's in a good state and it launches okay. I mean, look, there were no network issues. I didn't have any graphical issues. I did have a few, but it wasn't like game breaking, and I didn't crash at all. So I hope that it carries over, and I would get the sense that it will. So based on my previous experience with the previous betas for every previous Battlefield game, I think that it will launch okay, but you never know. I don't want to bite my tongue, but we'll see how the game goes, but I think it should be good. Like I said, I had an absolute blast playing it. The game was really, really fun. I just think, a very few fine amount of tweaks here and there, and the game will be much better. But having said that, they're not going to change things like the kill counter color or how the map looks or how the helicopters fly, just for me. So, but I'm pretty content with just being a infantry player and running around with the guns and hopping in an LAV and killing people that way. So, actually, and the last thing that just reminded me, the destruction is fantastic as well. It is so cinematic. I love it. The only thing that I wish was that it was a little bit harder to destroy everything, but overall though, still no complaints. I can deal with it, so it's still very, very fun. And I guess just reminded me, I do wish that Levolution made a bit of a comeback. I know people were pretty divided on it in Battlefield 4, but I loved it. It was a cool set piece for something big to happen in each map. I think if they brought that back in conjunction with the current destruction, it would be just a little bit more fun. So but overall, that's just me being nitpicky. Overall, really rate it. Really can't wait for the full game to release and do some videos on it, so it'll be really cool. Anyway, that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this little brief video of me ranting for probably like 15 minutes and giving my opinions of this sort of beta. And yeah, I'll do another video when the game launches and sort of give my opinion on how it actually feels in the final product. Look forward to it, and I can't wait. I'm excited for it. Anyway, that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. So adios.